If you wanted to build a time capsule to, like, show future generations what life was really like right now, your first instinct would probably be to pack it with front-page newspapers.
Right, like the official record of human events.
Yeah.
Because it feels important and, more importantly, it feels permanent.
Exactly. You'd grab the official declarations, the heavily edited stuff. But I've been thinking about this. If you really wanted to capture the absolute chaos, the complete whiplash of being a human being today, a newspaper is actually the worst possible medium.
Oh, totally. Because in a newspaper, everything is just neatly categorized into sections.
Yeah. But in our actual brains, we are processing, like, the threat of global conflict, artificial intelligence going completely rogue, and, I don't know, the sheer joy of getting a free pastry at the exact same time.
It is the ultimate cognitive dissonance of modern life. We are essentially living in a constant state of split-screen reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today, we are looking at a transcript from May 17th, 2026. And it's not a UN resolution or a dry academic paper.
No, far from it.
It's a transcript from this informal, highly comedic news radio show called Past Week, Next Week Express. It's hosted by two guys named Chris and Paul. And our mission today is to sift through this chaotic, super casual radio transcript and extract the actual nuggets of 2026 global news, pop culture, and social commentary hidden inside their banter.
And what makes this specific source so compelling is the unfiltered lens it gives us. I mean, you have these two average guys who are simultaneously discussing massive geopolitical shifts and severe domestic social issues.
Yeah.
But they do it in the exact same breath as discussing their bizarrely lucky string of food adventures. It is a perfect, completely unvarnished mirror of how you and I actually consume information.
So true. Well, let's jump right into the deep end with the global politics they were discussing.
Yeah.
Because the radio hosts started their week analyzing Donald Trump's 7th face-to-face summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping over in Beijing.
Right.
But reading the transcript, it's like what really stood out to them wasn't the actual diplomacy.
No, not at all. What they fixated on was the sheer mechanics of the trip. The transcript notes that Trump didn't bring the Secretary of State or, traditional career diplomats. Instead, he arrived with a massive entourage of tech executives and CEOs.
Wait, really? So instead of a diplomatic delegation, he essentially brought a corporate board.
Effectively, yes. He treated a massive geopolitical summit like a corporate business trip. And the radio hosts were incredibly sharp in their criticism of this.
Yeah, they did not hold back.
They didn't. They highlighted moments that felt completely absurd to them, like Trump reportedly trying to impress Xi Jinping by bragging about the number of Chinese restaurants operating in America.
Oh, wow. That sounds less like a geopolitical summit between two world superpowers and more like an awkward corporate merger where, like, the CEO hasn't read the briefing packet.
That's the exact sentiment the radio hosts had. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's fascinating to observe because whether you align with their politics or not, and we should be super clear here, this source is highly partisan and very critical of the administration. We aren't endorsing these views, we're just impartially analyzing the source material.
Exactly. Just the messengers here.
Right. But what we are actually analyzing is the public's total exhaustion with political theater. These hosts are watching traditional statecraft, that careful, measured diplomacy of the past, be entirely replaced by a spectacle of ego and transaction.
Yeah, they aren't just observing the news. They are actively rolling their eyes at it. And it wasn't just happening in China either. They were tracking a whole barrage of macro-level turbulence.
Oh, a ton of it.
They discussed Trump's proposal to suspend the federal gasoline tax. They got into the really tense debate around nuclear weapon agreements, specifically pointing out that the Obama-era nuclear deal had been completely scrapped.
Yep.
And they even covered the leadership shakeup at the Federal Reserve.
Which is, frankly, a massive economic mechanism that usually puts people to sleep. Yet it somehow made its way into a comedy radio show.
Right. Jerome Powell stepping down after 8 years of navigating the pandemic and soaring inflation, only to be replaced by a Trump ally, Kevin Walsh. Why does that specific swap matter so much that a comedy show would actually bring it up?
Because the Federal Reserve Chair controls the levers of the global economy, specifically interest rates.
Oh.
The radio hosts are picking up on the anxiety that a historically independent financial institution might be pivoting to align with a specific political administration.
Ah, sure.
And they treat that macroeconomic shift with the exact same casual cynicism as they do the political infighting they discuss next.
Oh, the infighting was wild. I mean, you have Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth publicly accusing Senator Mark Kelly of divulging classified information on CBS's Face the Nation.
Right.
And then, completely unprompted, they pivot to Kenya, where French President Emmanuel Macron literally interrupted a youth panel at the Africa Forward Summit to scold the audience for disrespecting the speakers.
It's unbelievable.
It's just this relentless barrage of global noise.
But notice how all of that global noise eventually trickles down and hits the pavement domestically. Because the transcript takes a very heavy turn here.
It really does.
The source transitions from all this international maneuvering to the raw reality of domestic social issues. And as a reader, you can physically feel the emotional weight shift for these radio hosts.
Yeah, it gets deeply personal for them. One of their co-hosts, a guy named Boogie, traveled down to Tulsa to attend the Black Wall Street celebration, which the source mentions is the largest black biker event in the nation.
Right.
So he's there
Yeah.
celebrating this really profound piece of history, but the transcript details a completely jarring discovery in the town.
Yes. While the celebration is happening, local businesses were discovered displaying nooses in their windows.
Just awful.
And the justification provided for those displays was that they were meant to represent, quote, history or art.
I can't even imagine the whiplash of that. You're at a celebration of black resilience, and you're confronted with the symbol of lynching disguised as an art installation. The radio hosts were, understandably, incredibly passionate about the hypocrisy here.
They pointed out the stark contradiction in modern policymaking, the idea that deeply hateful symbols are protected and fiercely defended under the guise of preserving history,
Right.
while simultaneously critical race education, the actual teaching of that history, is being actively banned in schools.
And that led them into a really intense discussion about the Supreme Court and voting rights, specifically focusing on Louisiana.
The mechanics of that voting rights discussion are crucial to understand. The radio hosts zeroed in on how Louisiana allegedly used alterations to the Voting Rights Act by a Republican-led Supreme Court to disenfranchise a black congressman.
Wow.
And by extension, completely dilute the power of black voters in that state.
And the host made a very heavy historical comparison here, didn't they?
They did. They explicitly connected this modern legal maneuvering to the historical 3/5 compromise.
Which, for anyone not fully versed in early U.S. history, that was the constitutional clause that counted enslaved individuals as 3/5 of a person for the purpose of legislative representation.
Exactly. The radio hosts were arguing that by strategically diluting black voting power today, the system is fundamentally treating black citizens as less than full Americans.
You can really hear the raw anger in their voices through the transcript. And again, just to enforce our neutrality here, regardless of where anyone stands on the Supreme Court's decisions, what we're really observing is genuine emotional burnout from citizens who feel targeted by these policies.
Yeah.
Policy decisions aren't just like abstract legal arguments happening in Washington. They actively, painfully reshape everyday social realities.
And that emotional burnout raises a vital question about cultural consumption versus civic responsibility. The hosts expressed intense frustration with white America eagerly consuming black culture.
Right, the sports, the music, the food.
Exactly. While turning a blind eye to the disenfranchisement of black citizens, it even led them to discuss potential boycotts, floating the idea of athletes refusing to play in certain states.
I was trying to think of how to conceptualize this for you listening, and it feels like treating a culture like a buffet.
Right. Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Society wants the aesthetic of the culture.
Yeah.
They want the cool music, the entertainment, the huge sports moments.
Yeah.
But they want to completely ignore the chefs who made it. They want the cultural capital without granting the political capital.
That is a highly accurate way to frame their frustration. When people feel that their fundamental citizenship is being stripped away while their culture is simultaneously being monetized, it creates a profound sense of alienation.
Absolutely.
And the transcript reveals that the radio host actually had to step away from the news cycle entirely toward the end of the week. The psychological weight was just too heavy.
But, I mean, when humans hit that level of societal burnout, we rarely just sit in silence. We look for an exit hatch. We look for the most massive, absurd distractions we can find. And the radio show completely pivoted to tech glitches and pop culture spectacles to cope.
Pure escapism. The brain demands a pressure valve.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about that pressure valve, starting with what they called Goblin Gate.
Oh, this was wild.
Yeah, OpenAI developers had to rest out a patch for ChatGPT because a new playful personality setting went completely rogue. The AI just started randomly inserting goblins, gremlins, and trolls into ordinary, serious conversations.
What's fascinating here is how it's a perfect encapsulation of technology moving far faster than its own guardrails.
Right.
You have the most advanced conversational AI in human history, and it's suddenly acting like a mischievous dungeon master in the middle of people's work email.
It's hilarious. But the distractions weren't just digital glitches. There was physical absurdity, too, like the weather heist over in France.
Yes, the Charles de Gaulle incident.
Right. Authorities were investigating the physical tampering of a weather station sensor near the Charles de Gaulle airport. The transcript says someone literally went out and heated the sensor to manipulate the temperature readings so they could win tens of thousands of dollars on a betting site called Polymarket.
This is where the intersection of technology and human incentive gets really fascinating.
Okay, I actually have to push back here because reading this, it sounds fake. Rigging a thermometer sounds like a silly senior prank, not a sophisticated international heist.
Us sound like a prank.
Right. How does heating up one single physical sensor guarantee a financial payout? Wouldn't a major betting platform use, like, satellite data or regional averages to verify the weather?
You would think so, but that exposes the vulnerability of how prediction markets actually function. Polymarket isn't like betting on a horse race. It's a crypto-based prediction market where people buy shares in the outcomes of real-world events.
Okay.
And these platforms rely on smart contracts, which are automated lines of code that trigger payouts based on specific data inputs, which they call oracles.
Wait, so the smart contract is looking for one very specific piece of data to decide who wins the money?
Exactly. The smart contract might be hard-coded to resolve the bet based solely on the official API beta feed coming from the Charles de Gaulle Airport weather station.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't care about satellite averages. It only cares about what that specific thermometer reports at a specific time. So if you physically heat that exact sensor with a hand warmer, the API reports a temperature spike.
And the code just trusts it.
Yes. The smart contract executes automatically, and the cryptocurrency is instantly transferred to the winner's wallet. It is a highly targeted manipulation of a digital oracle using physical sabotage.
That is incredible. It's literally like Ocean's 11, but for meteorology and blockchain. And it shows how society just craves these massive, intricate distractions, which completely explains why the hosts suddenly pivoted from prediction markets to Hollywood and the 2026 World Cup.
Because the spectacle is the point. The transcript details Christopher Nolan releasing a new summer blockbuster called The Odyssey, based on the epic poem.
Oh, huge cast, too.
Massive. It stars Matt Damon, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, and Tom Holland.
And it's shot entirely on IMAX, which is such an interesting contrast to the AI goblins we were just talking about. On one hand, you have uncontrolled generative chaos from a chatbot. On the other, you have Nolan, who is famous for meticulous, highly controlled practical art on massive physical film.
People crave both. They want the unpredictable chaos of the internet, but they also want the massive collective cultural moments.
Like the World Cup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The World Cup provides that collective moment. The hosts discuss Shakira and Burna Boy dropping the new official song, Dahi Dahi.
Catchy name.
And they were hyping up the first ever halftime show featuring Shakira, Madonna, and BTS. Plus, they went through the teams coming to play in Kansas City.
Right, which were England, the Netherlands, Argentina, and Algeria. Plus, the celebrity legal drama that never stops. They talked about Britney Spears avoiding jail with a plea deal for a weak reckless charge getting 1 year of probation.
Right. And for context, a weak reckless is a specific legal mechanism. It's a plea deal often negotiated down from a DUI.
Okay.
It acknowledges reckless driving with alcohol involved, but carries lighter penalties than a full DUI conviction.
Right. And they also mentioned Australian authorities investigating 2010 sexual offense allegations made by actor Ruby Rose against Katy Perry. It's just this relentless fire hose of culture.
Yeah, but notice how the global news and the massive pop culture spectacles eventually just sort of fade away. The deep dive goes hyper-local at the end.
Yes.
After processing international summits and AI heists, the hosts just start talking about bizarre personal anecdotes in their own neighborhoods.
This is my favorite part of the transcript, because eventually you're just a person walking down the street trying to get a coffee. Specifically, the host named Chris went on an unbelievable streak of what he called food luck.
It is a remarkable string of extremely specific, highly localized events.
So Chris decides to check out a coffee shop he's never been to called Vale. He walks in, and it's this incredibly chic, avant-garde vibe. They have the 1981 art house film My Dinner with Andre projecting silently on the wall.
Which sets a very specific tone.
Right, but here's the kicker. Right on the cash register, they have a massive, explicit political sign that says, ICE.
Referring to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the federal agency.
Exactly. So Chris walks up, it's a hot day, and he orders an iced latte specifically. A half-sweet, brown sugar, vanilla oat milk iced latte.
Very specific.
But he sees the sign and jokes with the barista, whose name is D.A. Chris says, just because I'm ordering ice doesn't mean I agree with the tactics of IC, and he repeats the explicit phrase from the sign to show solidarity.
And it paid off.
It did. Because he aligned with their political stance, D.A., the barista, gave him a 20% discount right on the spot. And later, he brings his wife, Jane, and she gets a free cruffin, which is like a croissant muffin hybrid just for being a first-timer.
It's a funny anecdote, but look at the mechanics of that interaction. That wasn't just a financial transaction. It was an exercise in tribal alignment.
See, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Think about the mechanics of modern marketing. You have an obscure 1980s movie on the wall and an aggressively explicit political sign right on the point-of-sale system. Is this the new blueprint for creating customer loyalty? You don't just sell coffee anymore. You are selling a hyper-specific cultural and political identity.
Precisely. In a world that feels overwhelmingly massive and out of control, where prediction markets are rigging the weather and the Supreme Court is altering voting districts, people crave micro-communities.
That makes a lot of sense.
That coffee shop, Vale, isn't marketing to everyone. In fact, they are actively trying to alienate people who disagree with them. By putting that sign up, they are filtering their customer base.
Right.
When Chris agreed with the sign, he wasn't just a customer buying a latte, he was proving he belonged to the in-group. That shared identity, rewarded with a discount and a free pastry, creates a far stronger emotional bond than a traditional loyalty punch card ever could.
Wow. Well, the luck didn't even stop there. His boss randomly buys him a free Cosmo burger. Then he and Jane go to La Fuente Mexican restaurant, where their favorite waiter, Carlos, just starts throwing freebies at them. Free cheese dip, 2 free beers, and 2 free margaritas to go.
Which is amazing.
It's like the universe decided to balance out all the heavy political news with just free carbohydrates.
And it triggers this intense wave of nostalgia and bonding between the hosts. They spent a significant amount of time reminiscing over the 1989 Michael Jackson Liberian Girl music video, just trying to spot all the celebrity cameos.
Yeah, they spotted Steven Spielberg, John Travolta, Paula Abdul, David Copperfield, and even Bubbles the Chimp. Just a completely random 1980s touchstone.
But the most poignant moment of their entire broadcast actually came from a listener story. They were sharing a childhood memory about a late classmate named Junior Atagi.
Oh, this part was so sweet.
They recalled how, back in the 6th grade, Junior single-handedly destroyed Paul's park and rec basketball team, the Southern Stallions.
And a listener named Amy chimed in with the best detail. She remembered Junior being a bit of a bully on the playground back then. And how did she stop him? She literally hit him with her broken arm cast.
Yep.
And according to the hosts, after she stood up to him with a fiberglass cast, he stopped being a bully and grew up to be an incredibly kind, wonderful person.
It is such a beautifully human detail to include in a news show. Because if we connect this hyper-local nostalgia to the bigger picture of the entire transcript, it reveals something really profound.
Yep, that.
Despite the massive global anxiety of trade wars in Beijing, despite the heavy emotional toll of domestic disenfranchisement in Louisiana, despite the sophisticated chaos of prediction markets, the human experience always defaults back to the tangible.
We anchor ourselves to the joy of a free pastry.
We have to. A shared laugh over a 1980s music video. The fond, slightly ridiculous childhood memories of neighborhood basketball games and broken arm casts. That is where we actually live our lives. The macro-level news, the presidents and the Federal Reserve, it's just the weather. But the hyper-local experience, the neighborhood coffee shop, the memories of our classmates, that is the house we live inside.
Wow. Okay, let's take a breath and look at the wild journey we just took through this 2026 time capsule. We started on the global stage, analyzing the corporate reality of U.S.-China summits and the shifting levers in the Federal Reserve.
Right.
We waded into the deep, emotionally exhausting waters of domestic politics, looking at the battle over voting rights and the pain of historical memory. We watched society look for an escape hatch through AI goblins, meteorology heists, and Shakira's halftime show. And finally, we landed safely back on solid ground with a free margarita and an iced latte at a local coffee shop.
It is a massive spectrum of the human condition, all captured in a single week's informal broadcast.
And I think for you listening, the big takeaway is this. Being well-informed doesn't just mean knowing the mechanics of the Federal Reserve or understanding how a smart contract works on a betting site. Truly understanding the world means understanding the bizarre, funny, and deeply personal ways everyday people process that heavy information. It's understanding the delicate balance between the global crisis and the local cruffin.
Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over. We spend so much time looking at polished, objective historical records to understand an era. But did this comedic, highly opinionated, chaotic radio show actually provide a more honest and accurate time capsule of what it feels like to be a human being in May 2026 than a traditional polished news broadcast ever could?
Because sometimes, to really see the whole picture, you have to look past the official records, step away from the massive, overwhelming control panel of global events, and just listen to the static between the stations. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you on the next one.